Hello YouTube, how's it going? This is the crossover and I'm back with another video. Today I'm going to be breaking down different Ben Simmons trade packages that I came up with. I selected 4 different teams that I thought, with the acquisition of Ben Simmons, they could take that next step. And also regarding these trade packages, I tried to keep in mind, Philly's status as a contender, and I tried to, come up with trades that would have them receiving pieces that they could put alongside Joel Embiid and would take them to the next step, as a contender. So without any further ado, let's get on to the trades. Taking a look at the first trade that I have Ben Simmons being traded to the Sacramento Kings in exchange for Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, and Davion Mitchell. We could start off with the Kings side of things. I think this trade would automatically make them worlds better than they were last year. They were the league's worst defensive team last year, and now with the acquisition of a top 10 defender in the league, in my opinion, at the very least, the top 10 defender in the league, they would automatically go from probably the worst defensive teams, maybe right around anywhere from probably, 20 to 18, 19, 20, which is a huge jump considering that this team was, in playoff playing contention. That big of a change on the defensive end could, change a lot of things for this team. As well as, on the offensive end, I think the fit would definitely be a bit tricky, considering, De'Aaron Fox's shooting inconsistencies, and as well as, I think Harrison Barnes is a good, not great shooter. I think Tyrese Halliburton is probably the best floor spacer on this team. And as well as the fact that they re-signed Richaun Holmes. I'm not sure how playable Richaun Holmes is with Ben Simmons. I'm not sure how much synergy those two would have. But again, I think the Sacramento would be willing to overlook that in order to, improve their defense as much as they would, which is what Ben Simmons would be bringing to them. We could take a look at the Philly side of things here. They would be acquiring Buddy Hield, who would automatically become the best shooter on the team. He had down year last year in Sacramento in terms of percentages, but I think a lot of that was just that he just didn't want to be there. He just seemed very unhappy, even going back, a year, 2 years ago. So I think he would have a fresh start in Philly. And I think he would put up big numbers in Philly. I think you could pencil him in looking at this team, probably right around 20, 21, 22 points per game. Better efficiency than last year. I think he could have great synergy with Joel Embiid, as they could have some, handoff action similar to what Joel Embiid used to have with JJ Redick back in the day. And then taking a look at these other two pieces, Davion Mitchell as well as Marvin Bagley. I think they would be more prospect type of players who I think Philly could then use and package to get, a true caliber point guard or, another star player to add to this team, because, that backcourt of Seth Curry and Buddy Hield probably isn't ideal. But, I think this trade would definitely have some merit. Buddy Hield would come in for Philly and, as I said previously, probably be the second, third best scorer. And then Marvin Bagley, if they keep Marvin Bagley, I could see him coming off the bench for them, continuing to rehab. He's always had injury concerns, but, considering how crowded Philly's front court is, I could definitely see them, packaging Marvin Bagley and trying to acquire, another, starting level caliber of player, potentially him and Davion Mitchell, as well as a first round pick, I think could definitely net Philly something special. At the very least, a very good starter. Marvin Bagley, I think, definitely has some potential still. He's had inconsistencies on both sides of the floor, but he's also shown some flashes. But flashes are just that. Consistency is the best ability, in my opinion. And Marvin Bagley has proven that he hasn't really been reliable in terms of staying on the floor. And I think he just needed a fresh start. Considering he's the number 2 pick behind. Right in front of Luka Doncic, excuse me. But again, I think, Marvin Bagley getting a fresh start would be great for him. I wouldn't see him sticking around in Philly. I think, he would immediately be shipped off along with Davion Mitchell, which we could talk about Davion Mitchell a little bit. He hasn't played in the NBA, so there's not much to talk about. He projects to be a good defender, very good defender. His offensive game, as you guys know, if you guys watch my content, I'm not high on Davion Mitchell at all. But I project him to be, a better shooting Patrick Beverley. And Marvin Bagley still has potential. So again, Philly, you would get Buddy Hield, and then you could package Bagley along with Mitchell, and try to get yourself another, starting caliber level of player. And then on Sacramento's side, you'd be acquiring, a top 10, top 5 defender in the league, and you were the worst defensive team last year. You'd be getting rid of a player that, was super really two players who are unhappy in Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley. And Davion Mitchell was your recent top 10 pick. It sucks to have to give him up, but it is what it is. So I think this trade benefits both sides. I don't think it's the best trade in the world for Philly, and I think there are some potential fit issues with Ben Simmons on Sacramento. But again, I think this is a solid trade that would benefit both teams. Again, in terms of Sacramento improving their defense, and as well as Philly, acquiring a star shooter in Buddy Hield, and they could package Bagley and Mitchell for something else. So again, this is a good, not great trade that I think both teams get better with. I think Sacramento is definitely clear winners in this trade over Philly, but I think Philly definitely has the potential to this trade would have the potential to become even more for Philly, considering that they can move off Bagley and Mitchell and maybe a pick for something greater. Taking a look at the second trade that I have Ben Simmons and Anthony Tolliver being shipped off to the Minnesota Timberwolves in exchange for D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, as well as Minnesota's 2022 first-round pick that would be top 10 protected. We could start from Minnesota's side of things. They'd be acquiring Ben Simmons, who, I can't really picture a better fit for Ben Simmons than next to Karl Anthony Towns. Aside from, the offensive prowess, Karl Anthony Towns is quite possibly the greatest shooting big in NBA history. Ben Simmons, a pick and pop with Ben Simmons and Karl Anthony Towns would be very hard to guard. Do you switch? Do you worry about Towns shooting? Do you worry about protecting the paint with Ben Simmons? And then at that point, Ben Simmons, if you do decide to cover Towns, Ben Simmons slashing, he could find shooters outside. I think he could even have some synergy with Anthony Edwards. Pick and roll both ways. Ben Simmons is the ball handler. Edwards pick and roll. In order for that to work out, I think that pick and roll will have to be a high pick and roll, probably a little bit above the 3-point line, so that Ben Simmons, if they do decide to sag, Ben Simmons could slash and really get into the paint, and Anthony Edwards could either roll off the pick and roll, and you could throw up lobs there. He could flash, cut out. They decide to switch. Edwards could get an ISO on Ben Simmons' man that switched onto him. There's a lot of potential and creativity on the offensive side of the floor, but defensively, again, just like the Sacramento Kings, the Minnesota Timberwolves would really benefit from Ben Simmons. I can't picture a better fit for Ben Simmons than with Karl Anthony Towns. And that applies to the defensive end as well. Ben Simmons would act as like a safety blanket for this team. He'd come in automatically, just like he would in the Kings, and be the best defender. And considering that Towns as well as Anthony Edwards aren't the best defenders in the world, Ben Simmons would come in and really be a safety blanket. And I'm not sure if Ben Simmons can truly carry a defense. I think he could definitely make a defense much better, but I don't know if he's big men tend to really, really carry, be walking defenses themselves. And Ben Simmons obviously he isn't really a big man. So I question, his if he can impact a defense to that level, not questioning how is he that good of a defender, but, Rudy Gobert carries the Jazz to the best defense in the league, right? But take him away, they'd probably be in the mid 20s. I question if Ben Simmons can have that level of impact, but he would definitely be a very, very positive impact player for this Minnesota Timberwolves, especially considering the redundancy on this team, right? Malik Beasley, your franchise player is a shooting guard. Malik Beasley's at that position. D'Angelo Russell's not a defender and inefficient. We'll get to D'Angelo Russell's offensive woes, but he's a scorer. And again, he's not a playmaker, he's not a facilitator. And Ben Simmons can come in and run your offense for Minnesota, so it's a match made in heaven for that team. Ben Simmons, Karl Anthony Towns, and Anthony Edwards, that's a big three to build around for years to come. I think that would keep Towns happy. I think, Anthony Edwards would be happy as well. That's a big three that Minnesota would build around for years to come. Now we can take a look at Philly side of things, and this is where I wasn't a big fan of this trade originally just because I'm not a D'Angelo Russell fan. I don't even really think he's a top 50 player in the NBA. I think he's not the best facilitator. He's not a good defender at all. Inefficient scorer, and he doesn't get to the free throw line nearly enough to be, like a top tier offensive creator. So I do think he is overrated by the general public in that sense. But I do think he is a serviceable player. I'd probably say he's probably, the third best player on a contending team, not even a champion. On a championship team, he's probably like the fourth best player. But Philly is really just striving for offense. Yeah, he definitely come in and run their offense from day one. And I think there's stretches where D'Angelo Russell is pretty good, and there's stretches where he's a very good player. And if Philly can take advantage of that, he's never really played. He just never played in a system where he's had players around him. I don't even know if D'Angelo Russell's had a better teammate than Tobias Harris. Maybe Spencer Dinwiddie a couple years ago at Brooklyn. Karis LeVert before he got hurt. But never to mind Joel Embiid. So again, we've never seen D'Angelo Russell with top tier. Well, again, excuse me, that statement's not correct. He has played with Karl Anthony Towns, but even then, they barely played together, so that doesn't even really count. But you put him in a situation where he has much better teammates around him. His defensive woes would be masked. And as well as what I really like for Philly in this trade as well is they would be adding Malik Beasley, who even if D'Angelo Russell isn't like a true number one offensive engine, perimeter wise, that is, Malik Beasley is an 18 to 20 point per game scorer, who you would also be getting in this trade. So that kind of makes up a little bit of what you'd be losing in terms of D'Angelo Russell not being like that top tier offensive engine. But you'd be adding another 20 point per game scorer, who I think Malik Beasley is a bit overrated. He's a good, not great shooter. And I think a part of his production last year with the Wolves was mainly due to just opportunity and lack of talent on that team. But again, a very solid player who this could be their starting backcourt from day one. A starting lineup of D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Matisse Thybulle, hoping that he improves his floor spacing capabilities. Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid. That's a pretty scary team. Then you got Seth Curry coming off the bench as a sixth man. That's looking like a very good team. That I think come crunch time, you'd be having D'Angelo Russell as your perimeter guy, and as well as Malik Beasley, giving help to Joel Embiid, which I think is a much better fit. And I have them acquiring the Wolves 2022 first round pick, and I have a top 10 protected, just because the Wolves probably won't make the playoffs. Still, they're probably going to be in the play-in tournament, even considering this trade, considering it would be their first year together. And I think top 10 protection is fair. And as well as, Ben Simmons is a much better player than D'Angelo Russell or Malik Beasley. So in order to, sweeten the deal, you acquire that pick. And I think Minnesota would still do this trade, even with the pick included, just because, you got to get better. Minnesota's been in the basement of the NBA for such a long time now. Just exclude the first round pick, just get better. And that's the goal in the NBA, to keep getting better. And, Minnesota's been in the basement of the NBA long enough. You got two superstars, a potential superstar in Anthony Edwards, a superstar offensive talent in Karl Anthony Towns. Go get that a defensive superstar, a glue guy really on offense, and take that next step as a franchise. And I think, giving up that 2022 first round pick is well worth it, especially with it being top 10. So again, Philly would get much better, offensively. D'Angelo Russell, with much better situation that he's ever been in. I could see him taking a next step, and even if he doesn't, you have Malik Beasley there, who's a 15 to 20 point per game scorer. And then with the Wolves side, Ben Simmons is the perfect fit with Karl Anthony Towns and as well as Anthony Edwards. So it's a win-win for both teams, in my opinion. Taking a look at the third trade that I have Ben Simmons being shipped off to the Portland Trailblazers, along with Anthony Tolliver in exchange for CJ McCollum, Norman Powell, and Nasir Little. We could start off with Portland side of things. Not the biggest fan of Portland obtaining Ben Simmons as I am Sacramento or Minnesota. But while they obtain Ben Simmons, Portland is a mediocre defensive team. I don't think they're as bad as those other the previous two teams, but they're still a very bad defensive team. I'd say probably their best defender is Robert Covington, and even then he's massively overrated by the general public. He's a good, not great defender. Very good off-ball defender, help defender, but in terms of like on-ball productivity, it's just not there. Ben Simmons will come in and be a safety blanket for this team. I think on offense, even though Yusuf Nurkic doesn't really space the floor, I think given both of their playmaking capabilities, I could see it working out. But I think offensively, you'd be hoping Anthony Simons could take that next step as a player. He'd come in and be that starting two guard. Given the fact that, I have both CJ McCollum and Norman Powell being shipped off. You hope that Robert Covington's shooting could also, keep up, and because that would be very key on this team. Starting lineup of Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons could probably be that second scorer for this team. Hopefully he takes that step that this trade would be banking on him doing that. Robert Covington at the three, giving this team space. Ben Simmons really just being a safety blanket for this team, really just being a roll man. And, you'd also be asking a lot for Yusuf Nurkic in terms of taking that next step, as hopefully, a roll man and, taking that next step with playmaking opportunities, given Ben Simmons' weaknesses offensively. But I really like this team defensively. Lillard and Simons aren't the best defensively. But Robert Covington is all right defensively. But then, Ben Simmons, being what he is defensively, I think could really carry this unit. Excuse me, as well as, Yusuf Nurkic, continuing to get healthier. And you got to keep in mind, Yusuf Nurkic, he hasn't really had a full offseason to work on his game in a while. So he would have that opportunity to do that. So I think Portland would definitely get better, from this trade. Taking a look at Philly's side of things, CJ McCollum was slotted in at the 2 guard spot from day one, be their de facto shooting guard, be their number one option on the perimeter. This past season before he got hurt, CJ McCollum was averaging, damn near 27 points per game on amazing efficiency from behind the arc. He was an all-star last year. So he'd be coming into Philly and being that true number one option on the perimeter. Joel Embiid, CJ McCollum pick and roll. You're not guarding that. Joel Embiid has never truly played with a guard who can score the way CJ McCollum can. So that would be pretty interesting to see what their synergy will look like. And he's never really played with a player like Norman Powell either, who can create his own shot the way he can, especially from behind the arc as well, and as well as play off the ball. I really like this Norman Powell acquisition for Philly. If this trade were to go down, I still think Philly would need to, find like a floor general point guard, somebody who's a little bit more defensive minded. I'm not sure who that player would be right off the top of my head, but I'm sure they would be able to work it out. But I assume, just look at the rest of now. Starting line would probably be, Seth Curry, CJ McCollum, Norman Powell, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. Very solid starting lineup. Is it better than with Ben Simmons? Probably, yeah, in my opinion, much better offensively. Defensively would still be a question mark, given CJ McCollum's woes. But, I think Philly has enough defensive talent on this roster, like how I said with D'Angelo Russell, to overlook any defensive woes. And then they'd also be obtaining Nasir Little, a player who they could probably package along with a second-round pick. Maybe Matisse Thybulle, maybe Isaiah Joe, their second-round pick last year, and, find, a quality starter. So, again, Portland would be obtaining, an awesome defensive talent, would take them to the next step on that level of the floor. Bit risky of a trade, they'd be asking a lot from Anthony Simons to step up in that starting 2-guard role. And as well as Yusuf Nurkic for probably being, the second option offensively. But, I think those defensive, what they'd be getting defensively overrides any of, the potential problems on offense, as well as just, changing things up. And, for Philly's side, they'd be acquiring a number one scorer. CJ McCollum has never been able to be in a situation where he's been given the keys to offense despite his talent. Joel Embiid's never really played with a guard who can create like CJ McCollum can. So, their chemistry would probably be awesome. And as well as Norman Powell, player who can play on and off the ball and give you buckets. And, they'd be acquiring a young player, Nasir Little, who they could package for more assets down the road. So I think this trade would be a win-win for both teams. Taking a look at my fourth and final trade, I have Ben Simmons, Tyrese Maxey, as well as Jaden Springer being shipped off to the Washington Wizards in exchange for Bradley Beal. This is pretty different compared to the other 3 trades where, Ben Simmons would be added to, current stars in order to try to elevate that team in terms of, playoff contention. While this is a complete reset for Washington and, Philly would be acquiring, a superstar offensive talent. So we can start on the Philly side. Really not much to talk about. I mean, I don't know what else to say besides Joel Embiid and Bradley Beal. Just by swapping, if you add Bradley Beal instead of Ben Simmons on this team, it's a championship caliber team, you'd still have holes to fill out, in terms of the bench, maybe a starting point guard. But, again, Joel Embiid and Bradley Beal, you'd assume you don't know how long Brooklyn's going to last, but, just those two being a pair automatically puts, Philly in top 3 teams in the East every year just based off of those two. So, I mean, there's not much to say. Joel Embiid and Bradley Beal. But this is really exciting in terms of me. I'm a big fan of like young players. I like to follow a lot of young players draft. You guys know I love the draft based on the videos that I make. But so Ben Simmons going to this Washington team. Look, I think it's awesome fit. It's an awesome fit. He could slide in, even if you want to slide him at the point guard spot. You could have Tyrese Maxey slide in at that two guard spot. Right next to him, be that two way guard presence for him. Kyle Kuzma space the floor, 3-and-D role player. Rui Hachimura, can take a next step as an offensive engine, offensive creator at that forward spot for Washington. Thomas Bryant, a big man who loves to pick and pop, would have great synergy with Ben Simmons. They could go 5 out with Ben Simmons. Again, the relative. All those guys are good, not great shooters. Kyle Kuzma definitely has had his inconsistencies. Rui Hachimura is continuing to develop. Tyrese Maxey was a rookie last year, so they might not be the best of shooters, but again, they could still go 5 out for Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, Thomas Bryant, pick and pop would be very exciting to watch. With 3 other shooters in the corners. They still have Davis Bertans on this roster. They just drafted Corey Kispert. Denny Avdia could continue to develop as well as a two-way presence, even though I think he needs to be in a situation where he has the ball much more in his hands. So I could definitely see Tyrese Maxey, Denny Avdia coming off the bench and being, like that offensive engine for Washington, as well as Jaden Springer. Jaden Springer can play on and off the ball too. So I think Ben Simmons would be in the perfect situation for this trade. I mean, I really can't imagine a perfect trade for either of these teams. Washington gets, a superstar defensive talent who, has the potential to become an offensive superstar, but has never really been built around properly. Again, he's never really developed his game offensively, but, if you put him in this situation, I could definitely see him being a 28 and a 9 guy, given how much the team would have to rely on him, instead of, asking him to just fill in next to Joel Embiid. You'd be like, here's the ball, Ben Simmons. You have 5 out. It's a 5 out set. Go do you. Go attack the basket and find shooters. And that's what he would do. He's done that in Philly in the past. And I think, on this Washington, he would be able to do that. And he would be in a situation with, again, I don't think they would be all that bad either defensively, because it's not a lot of great talent on that end of the floor, but it's a bunch. Kyle Kuzma, 6'8", I believe, 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", somewhere in that range. Rui Hachimura, 6'8". Denny Avdia, 6'8". Jaden Springer, 6'4". Davis Bertans is pretty a bad defender. But Jaden Springer projects to be well defensively. Tyrese Maxey, 6'2", 6'3". Thomas Bryant, even with his defensive woes, he's still 7 feet. And, Ben Simmons could, again, act for a safety blanket for this team defensively. So I really, really love this trade for Ben Simmons. I think it would be the perfect landing spot for him. I think, he could really take Washington to that next step as they would build around him with all their versatile young forwards that they have around him. And then again, going on Philly's side, not much to talk about. Bradley Beal and Joel Embiid. Would they have a bench to fill out? Yes. Would they still need a starting point guard? Yes. But is Bradley Beal a better player than Ben Simmons and a much better fit with Joel Embiid? Yes. So this is the best trade in my opinion. I really, really, really love this trade for both situations. Again, with Philly would get, a superstar duo who would the perfect fit together. And then Washington, being able to build around Ben Simmons, put a bunch of young, versatile shooters, all tall, positionless players. Kyle Kuzma, Rui Hachimura, Denny Avdia, they could all play 3 to 4. I think Denny Avdia could potentially play some point guard as well, with his playmaking capabilities in spurt minutes. Jaden Springer space the floor. Tyrese Maxey could be a two-way guard. Davis Bertans, even though he had a down year last year, could be one of the best shooters in the league, as well as Thomas Bryant being one of the better floor spacing centers in the league. It's a perfect situation for Ben Simmons, and Bradley Beal in Philly is a perfect situation. So again, I definitely think that this is the best trade for Ben Simmons. And that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, Ben Simmons is a pretty challenging player to find trades for, but I think, in those certain situations in Sacramento, Minnesota, and Portland, I think it's a really a match made in heaven. I think he would elevate all 3 of those teams defensively where they struggle the most and help elevate them in the Western Conference standings. And then for Washington, he would be a reset button for them, and he'd be a player that they could build around with all the young, versatile forwards that they have, and they could really bring out the best in his repertoire and his skill set. But again, that's the end of the video, guys. Let me know what you guys think about the trades, what you like, what you don't like, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and any other potential Ben Simmons trade packages that you have. Drop them down in the comments. Let's have a discussion about it. But thank you guys so much for watching. That's the end of the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.